December 19th, 1944, 06:23 hours. The Ardennes forest near Neuville, Belgium, was steeped in a bitter, profound cold. Inside the dense, claustrophobic shell of his 44.8-ton Panther tank's turret, the commander, Unteroffizier Klaus Wendel, wrestled with his personal logbook. The leather was stiff, the pencil frozen, and his gloved fingers struggled with the task. His breath, a thick, white vapor, choked the cramped space, a sensory experience that underscored the harsh reality of the easternmost front of the German counteroffensive. His entry was utterly grim, documenting not a conventional enemy, but a terrifying mechanical ghost. The Americans now possess a Phantom Hunter. We hear its distinctive high-rev whine, a sound like an angry hornet on the flanks, but visibility is nil. By the time our turret completes its traverse, they have vanished. Wendell noted the staggering cost in metal and in shattered doctrine. 3 of our powerful Tiger I tanks were lost only the previous day to this unseen threat. The problem was agonizingly simple, a physical limitation rooted in the very strength of his machine. Before the Panther's massive, heavily geared turret could complete its full rotation, a 60-second maneuver, a precious, vulnerable minute of exposure, the shadow that fired the shell would disappear into the gloom. Out past the tree line, shrouded in the cold, pre-dawn gloom of the Battle of the Bulge, the M18 Hellcats of the 705th Tank Destroyer Battalion were already shifting into their attack positions. Wendell had no way of knowing that within precisely 17 minutes, his entire understanding of armored warfare, the 5 years of tactical refinement by the Wehrmacht, would be irrevocably shattered. His world, built on principles of heavy steel, long-range accuracy, and deliberate fire, was about to be overturned by an American vehicle that deliberately ignored every established rule. The Panther's 75mm KWK-42 cannon, the pinnacle of German gunnery, was designed to defeat any Allied tank at over 2,000 meters. Its 80mm of sloped frontal armor was considered near impenetrable. It was the epitome of German engineering, heavy, formidable, and utterly methodical. Yet, in just 3 minutes of combat, Wendell would watch multiple German tanks incinerated by enemies moving at speeds German armor simply couldn't match, even on smooth, prepared highways. This was the terrifying new reality. America had engineered something that hunted unlike anything in military history. It wasn't about being stronger or heavier. It was simply, fundamentally, faster. The genesis of a hunter, doctrine versus industrial philosophy. The very concept for the M18 Hellcat began as America formally entered the war in December 1941. German tank philosophy fixated on overwhelming firepower and thick protection, demanding the incremental mass increase that resulted in the 44.8-ton Panther and the monstrous 69.8-ton King Tiger. American designers at General Motors, however, embraced a radical concept rooted in industrial pragmatism and mobility. This profound difference was rooted entirely in doctrine. The U.S. Tank Destroyer Force, established under General Leslie McNair on November 21, 1941, was founded on a core principle, codified in Field Manual FM 18-5, Seek, Strike, and Destroy. General Andrew D. Bruce, who commanded the Critical Training Center at Camp Hood, meticulously detailed this. Seek meant continuous, aggressive reconnaissance. Strike meant destruction by quick gunfire, not charging. And destroy meant the total elimination of the threat through superior tactics and speed. This new American doctrine explicitly favored mobility and concentrated firepower above massive armor protection. The development was a chaotic sprint. It began with the T-49 57mm gun. But as the demand for anti-tank punch grew, the design evolved into the T-67 75mm gun. Finally, the successful pilot model, the 76mm gun motor carriage T-70, emerged. The contract was formally awarded in January 1942 to the Buick Motor Division in Flint, Michigan. Chief Engineer Joseph Roberts faced seemingly paradoxical requirements. Mount a high-velocity 76mm main gun capable of neutralizing any German tank, maintain a low profile for concealment, and hit speeds over 50 miles per hour, all while keeping the vehicle mass below the critical threshold of 20 tons. The compromise was severe, but intentional. The M18's armor was deliberately paper-thin, just 25.4 millimeters on the thickest part of the turret face, and only 12.7 millimeters on the hull front. This minimal shielding was only engineered to stop heavy machine gun fire and high-explosive shrapnel. German engineers later confirmed that an 88mm shell would pass straight through both sides. This singular, deliberate prioritization of mobility, defying 5 years of European armored tradition, culminated in the M18 becoming the fastest tracked armored fighting vehicle of World War II. Engineering for velocity, the technical blueprint. The M18's revolutionary performance was enabled by the perfect combination of its propulsion system and its highly efficient running gear. The Hellcat was powered by a Wright R-975 radial aircraft engine, a proven 9-cylinder design ensuring reliable operation even in the bitterest sub-zero temperatures. Early production models, spanning serial numbers 1 to 1350, used the naturally aspirated R975C1, generating 350 horsepower. Later units, serial numbers 1351 through the final 2507, which began production in March 1944, received the supercharged R975C4, generating a full 400 horsepower. This immense power, combined with the light 17.7 to 20-ton chassis, delivered an outstanding power-to-weight ratio of 20 to 22.5 horsepower per ton, an enormous advantage compared to the Panther's comparatively sluggish 15 horsepower per ton. The second critical factor was the hydromatic automatic transmission coupled with a torque converter. This was an indispensable operational advantage over German tanks, which required complex, exhausting manual shifting and clutch work. The Panther's sophisticated transmission, though technically advanced, was tragically fragile, with final drive failures plaguing the vehicle throughout its service. The M18 driver, conversely, could instantly accelerate and maintain top speed while executing rapid, complex maneuvers, a tactical feat impossible for any German armor. The vehicle could launch from 0 to 30 miles per hour in a blinding 7 seconds. It was capable of 55 miles per hour with its governor, and 60 miles per hour without, on paved surfaces. The M18's lightweight design and wide tracks produced a minimal ground pressure of only 10.5 psy, a figure lower than many wheeled trucks. This allowed the Hellcat to navigate deep mud and heavy snow that completely immobilized the 57-ton Tiger Wine 15.2 psi and the heavier 69.8-ton King Tiger. This capability provided immense strategic mobility. While a King Tiger needed the rare and massive Class 70 bridges, the M18 could cross any Class 24 structure, literally any bridge that could support a loaded supply truck. This benefit proved decisive during the final push to the Rhine, allowing Hellcats to bypass bottlenecks and appear behind German lines in locations previously considered impossible for armor. The nightmare revealed, the 3-minute window. The Hellcat first saw action in the Italian campaign with the 894th Tank Destroyer Battalion in the spring of 1944. But the main theater baptism came in Europe with the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion, landing at Utah Beach in July 1944. The German introduction to the Hellcat occurred during the Normandy breakout. Near Coutances, France, on July 29, 1944, German heavy units filed alarming reports. These documented encounters with American tank destroyers that simply vanished before return fire could be aimed. The German analysis was devastating. A Panther's turret needed 60 seconds for a full rotation, while its maximum off-road speed was only about 15 miles per hour. Conversely, the M18 Hellcat could sustain a cross-country speed of 26 miles per hour. This extreme speed difference meant that, at 500 meters, a Hellcat moving perpendicularly would cross a Tiger's gun sight in just 4.5 seconds, faster than the gunner could track manually. This fact defined the entire battlefield. 3 minutes was all the warning they had. The M18 76mm M1A2 gun was the perfect weapon for this doctrine. Its standard M62 APCBC rounds struggled with Panther frontal armor, but easily defeated the 40mm side armor from over 500 meters. The gun's perceived weakness, its inability to reliably defeat heavy frontal armor at range, was precisely what forced crews to embrace the flanking maneuvers where the Hellcat's speed was paramount. When the extremely scarce M93 HVAP tungsten core rounds were used, crews often received only 1 or 2 rounds per month. Penetration increased to a lethal 157mm at 500 yards. The projectile's muzzle velocity of 2,600 feet per second meant it often impacted the target before the sound of the shot reached the enemy crew, adding a layer of psychological terror to the physical destruction. The doctrine triumphs: training and logistics. German doctrine stressed methodical defensive combat, relying heavily on the strength of the Tiger and Panther. The Hellcat invalidated every part of this training and military philosophy. At Camp Hood, Texas, later Fort Hood, the tank destroyer tactical and firing center, M18 crews underwent an intensive 17-week program. The curriculum, driven by General Bruce's relentless focus on initiative, centered on the maxim, "Speed is life." Crews practiced the shoot and scoot principle, fire, and immediately displace to a new position within 30 seconds. This concept was drilled until it became instinctive, often under the revolutionary live fire conditioning course, the first U.S. Army training to use live overhead fire, subjecting trainees to a full week of simulated combat stress. This training created the infamous Wolfpack tactics, 3 or 4 Hellcats operating in coordinated independent attacks, using their reliable SCR-508 radio systems to create overlapping fields of fire while maintaining constant motion. This capability was a massive force multiplier. German tanks often fought in communication isolation due to faulty late-war radios and minimal training for replacements. By late 1944, new German tank crews sometimes received as little as 2 weeks of training before being sent to the front, creating a decisive gap in crew quality that the M18 exploited mercilessly. The contrast was deepened by logistics. Between July 1943 and October 1944, Buick's factory completed the entire production run of 2,507 M18 Hellcats. This industrial might meant that every lost M18 could be instantly replaced. The Germans, meanwhile, struggled throughout the war to build heavy tanks. Total Panther production was only around 6,000, while only 492 King Tigers and 1,347 Tiger I tanks were ever constructed. The grim mathematics of industrial capacity were unavoidable. For every one Panther produced, America built 8 tank destroyers and tanks combined. The Hellcat's operational tempo was magnified by the incredible American logistical superiority. German forces, by late 1944, suffered chronic fuel shortages and a constant lack of spare parts. The Red Bull Express kept American tanks fueled and supplied. Operation Wacht am Rhein itself was partly intended to capture Allied fuel depots because German supplies were insufficient for prolonged offensive operations. This fuel crisis often forced German tanks to fight defensively from static positions, exactly where the mobile Hellcat had the greatest advantage. German engineers, examining captured M18s, often dismissed their apparent crudeness: functional welds instead of perfect seams, armor plates showing tool marks, and seemingly crude interior ergonomics. Yet this crude, pragmatic vehicle consistently destroyed German tanks built with watchmaker-like precision. Ardennes, September 1944. The Battle of Ardennes in France provided the M18's definitive proof of concept. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion, attached to the 4th Armored Division, confronted elements of the German 113th Panzer Brigade. On September 19th, Lieutenant Edwin Leiper's platoon engaged German armor in thick fog at extremely close range. The Hellcats destroyed 5 German tanks in the first 5 minutes, losing only 1. The engagement was prolonged, with Captain Tom Evans earning the Distinguished Service Cross by personally manning a disabled Hellcat's gun. The final results were legendary: 39 German tanks eliminated for the loss of 4 M18 tanks destroyed, and 3 damaged, achieving a remarkable 5.6 to 1 kill ratio. Bastogne, the Bulge. The Hellcat's legend was cemented during the Battle of the Bulge in December 1944. The 705th Tank Destroyer Battalion was rushed to reinforce the embattled 101st Airborne Division. Near Nouville, the M18s from the 609th and 705th Battalions engaged the elite 2nd Panzer Division. Lieutenant David K. Hagens's platoon of 4 M18 achieved spectacular results, destroying 14 enemy tanks while losing only 1 vehicle. Over the 2-day battle, the combined Hellcat force helped destroy at least 30 German tanks, inflicting between 600 and 1,000 German casualties and creating a crucial 48-hour delay that bought vital time for the Allied defense. Overall, the 705th destroyed roughly 40 German tanks for 6 M18s lost during the siege of Bastogne, attaining a final 6.7 to 1 kill ratio. The ability of the M18 to operate effectively in the mud and deep snow, where heavier German armor became bogged down, was a major factor in the successful defense of the city. The ultimate legacy of the 3 minutes. The M18's thin armor was its biggest vulnerability, a fact constantly exploited by German anti-tank guns. Analysis of losses showed that 40 to 50% of M18 casualties were caused by enemy tanks and anti-tank guns, while 25 to 35% were due to mechanical failures. Yet, the open-topped turret design paradoxically raised crew survival rates to over 80%, a testament to the fact that fast bailouts were possible. This was in sharp contrast to the tragically low 35% survival rate for German heavy tank crews. The M18's influence extended far beyond 1945. Post-war armies studied its deployment, acknowledging that mobility could, in certain situations, be more critical than protection. Modern military doctrines focusing on shoot and scoot, rapid displacement, and mobility as a primary defense can all be traced directly back to the Hellcat's use in 1944. The vehicle finished the war with 526 confirmed enemy armored vehicle kills against 216 combat losses, yielding the highest kill-to-loss ratio, 2.4 to 1, of any American tank or tank destroyer. The strategic consequences were enormous and deeply psychological. The mere presence of Hellcat units in a sector could halt German armored movement for hours as commanders attempted to confirm their locations. During the Ardennes offensive, intercepted German communications showed commanders asking for explicit confirmation that no Hellcats were in the area before committing their reserves. The offensive that was meant to split the Allied forces was partly paralyzed by the fear of vehicles weighing less than half as much as a Panther. The pursuit of the invulnerable supertank resulted in vehicles that were paralyzed by high-speed warfare. The M18 Hellcat proved that ultimate victory isn't always about superior protection or brute strength. It's about the right doctrine used correctly. The Germans were defeated not by a bigger gun, but by an enemy that moved like cavalry. A sports car with a cannon that struck and vanished before the fortress could turn its gun. For the German tank crews facing the M18 Hellcat, 3 minutes was all the warning they had. 3 minutes from the sound of the high-revving engine to the impact of the shell. 3 minutes to traverse the turret, acquire the target, and fire, while the Hellcat was already racing to its next ambush point at 55 miles per hour. The ultimate lesson learned. The lesson that changed armored warfare forever. The best armor is often not being where the enemy can shoot you. August 19th, 1944. Wehrmacht Headquarters, East Prussia. Generaloberst Alfred Jodl studied the latest reports from the collapsing Western Front. His staff had calculated the arithmetic of Allied supply lines stretching over 400 miles from the Normandy beaches to Patton's spearheading Third Army. The Americans have outrun their logistics. Patton will halt within days, perhaps hours. No army can sustain such swift advance speeds without fuel. From his position at Hitler's Wolf's Lair headquarters, Jodl analyzed what every German general understood from experience. An armored division consumed 150,000 gallons of fuel daily when advancing. The Americans were now 400 miles from their supply depots. The calculation was undeniable. Patton's Third Army was certain to stop, giving the Wehrmacht the critical time to regroup at the Seine, perhaps hold until winter. What Jodl couldn't possibly know was that 125 miles away, 5,958 trucks were already rolling eastward in an endless column, their headlights blazing in direct defiance of military convention, transporting 12,500 tons of crucial supplies every 24 hours. The Red Ball Express, a logistics operation so bold that German military science had never deemed it feasible, was about to shatter every military assumption about mechanized warfare. Within 72 hours, Patton's supposedly stalled tanks would smash through German positions at the Seine. Within a week, they would liberate Paris. Within a month, they would stand at the German border. The Wehrmacht's most accomplished military thinkers were about to get a painful lesson in American logistics that would fundamentally redefine their understanding of modern conflict. This unprecedented effort was delivered by 23,000 truck drivers, 75% of them African American, who transformed a temporary one-way highway system into the most effective military supply line in history. The German General Staff's conviction in American logistical failure was rooted in years of military background and current observations. The Wehrmacht had pioneered the Blitzkrieg, revolutionized combined arms operations, and understood intimately the cruelty of extended supply lines. Their own offensives had repeatedly collapsed when logistics failed to match tactical triumph. In Russia, the Wehrmacht's forward momentum stalled, not from Soviet opposition initially, but from the simple failure to supply troops across vast distances. German trucks frequently broke down on Russian roads. Horse-drawn wagons, still accounting for 80% of German military transport, could not match the speed of panzer spearheads. Different railway gauges meant supplies piled up far from the front. General der Panzertruppe Heinrich von Luttwitz, who would command the 47th Panzer Corps from September 1944, had noted in July, "The Americans face the same logistical impossibility we faced in Russia. Their mechanical advantage becomes a profound disadvantage. Machines demand fuel, ammunition, and parts. They have advanced 400 miles in 30 days. History teaches us what follows: paralysis." German intelligence carefully tracked American consumption rates. A single Sherman tank consumed 0.5 miles per gallon on roads, far worse cross-country. An infantry division required 700 tons of provisions daily. An armored division needed 1,000 tons. Patton commanded 12 divisions advancing on a 60-mile front. The arithmetic seemed irrefutable. 12,000 tons daily, moved 400 miles from the beaches over damaged infrastructure through a transportation network the Germans had systematically destroyed during their retreat. General Major Siegfried Westphal, who became Chief of Staff to Field Marshal von Rundstedt in September, calculated on August 20th, even if the Americans had unlimited trucks, which they do not, and perfect roads, which they do not, and zero mechanical failures, which is impossible, they still could not sustain Patton's advance for more than another 48 hours. Physical laws cannot be ignored, not even by American industry. At 2 p.m. on August 25, 1944, in a commandeered French chateau near Le Mans, Lieutenant Colonel Laurent Ayres of the Motor Transport Service faced a room of doubtful officers. The data they presented was grim. Patton's Third Army was consuming supplies faster than any army in military history, advancing at speeds that defied all standard logistical planning. Conventional supply methods, railway transport, scheduled convoys, and depot distribution had completely failed under the stress. "Gentlemen," Ayres announced, "we are going to establish a one-way highway from Cherbourg and the beaches straight to the front lines. Every vehicle will operate 20 hours out of 24. No stopping except for essential fuel and emergencies. We will move 12,500 tons daily minimum." The name was derived from railway language. A Red Ball freight was an express shipment that took priority over everything else. The Red Ball Express would function on the identical principle: absolute priority, no interruptions, no exceptions. The operational guidelines defied German military doctrine: 2 parallel one-way roads, one for loaded trucks moving forward, one for empty trucks returning. 24-hour operations with headlights on, abandoning blackout discipline. A no-stop policy, except for mechanical failures and refueling. 5-minute convoy spacing, keeping a 35 miles per hour average speed. Mobile repair units every 50 miles. Military police checkpoints removing any vehicle moving below 25 miles per hour. Colonel Charles O. Thrasher, commanding the advanced section of ADSEC, reviewed the projected figures. We need 140 truck companies, 5,958 vehicles minimum, operating at 90% availability. That's impossible by any logistics textbook ever written. Yet, within 36 hours, the impossible was operational. On August 26, 1944, drivers from the 3916 Quartermaster Truck Company climbed into their GMC CKW 2 and 1/2 ton trucks, nicknamed the Deuce and a Half, loaded with 105mm artillery shells, destined for Patton's guns at Melun, 300 miles east. The makeup of the Red Ball Express would have shocked German racial theorists. Of the 23,000 drivers who would eventually work the route, roughly 75% were African-American soldiers serving in a still segregated army. These men, who could not dine in white establishments or use white facilities across much of America, were keeping the most celebrated white general's army in motion. The drivers swiftly developed their own subculture. They painted slogans on their vehicles: Patton's Blood Bank, Hitler, Here We Come, Detroit to Berlin Express. They established their own traffic rules. Slower vehicles pulled off immediately. Breakdowns were shoved into ditches. Any truck under 20 miles per hour was considered an obstacle. By August 28th, German reconnaissance units started reporting something unprecedented. Units from Aufklärung 116 radioed from positions overlooking the main Red Ball route. Continuous vehicle column, headlights visible for 20 kilometers. No spacing, no blackout discipline. Estimate 1,000 vehicles per hour. Americans have abandoned all military precaution. This violated every tenet of German military instruction. Headlights at night invited aerial attack. Continuous columns were perfect artillery targets. No space between vehicles meant one disabled truck could halt the entire column. Yet the Americans appeared unconcerned. General Lieutenant Edgar Feuchtinger, commanding the 21st Panzer Division, personally observed the Red Ball Express from hidden locations on August 30th. His report to Army Group B headquarters revealed growing dismay. The adversary operates a supply system beyond our comprehension. Vehicles pass at 30-second intervals, day and night, without ceasing. They do not conceal themselves, do not disperse, do not adhere to any regulations we understand. It is not military science. It is mass production applied to warfare. What the Germans failed to grasp was that American logistics operated on entirely different principles. Where German doctrine stressed secrecy, Americans prioritized volume. Where Germans maintained vehicles, Americans anticipated 20% mechanical failure and planned accordingly. Where Germans obeyed rigid military procedure, Americans constantly improvised. The statistics achieved by the Red Ball Express shattered German calculations of logistical viability. The first week, August 25th to 31st, 1944, 89,939 tons of supplies delivered. Daily average, 12,848 tons. Round-trip distance, 686 miles. Vehicle rotations, 5,958 trucks making 1.5 trips daily. Fuel consumed by the operation itself, 300,000 gallons. Captured German logistics experts reviewed these figures from American papers and dismissed them as propaganda. But the numbers were authentic, and they were rising. The Red Ball Express produced hourly innovations as drivers and mechanics solved problems that German military science considered impossible to overcome. When trucks failed, approximately 1,800 daily, mobile maintenance units performed quick repairs on the roadside. Mechanics developed a triage method, 15 minutes to repair or push the truck off the road. Parts were scavenged from vehicles beyond immediate salvage. Engines were swapped in 45 minutes using mobile cranes. When the main Red Ball route became too congested, drivers created bypasses. They took over French buses to move personnel and free up trucks for cargo. They borrowed German vehicles, painting them olive drab and putting them into service. They constructed detours around destroyed bridges, using debris from bombed buildings as roadbed. The Germans, watching this organized disorder, could not understand it. German logistics emphasized meticulous planning, strict maintenance schedules, and proper procedures. The Americans ignored every rule, yet their system sped up instead of collapsing. The most shocking revelation for German observers was American fuel management. The Red Ball Express used 300,000 gallons of gasoline daily just for its own operations, more than many German armies received for all purposes. Yet fuel never ran out. The Americans had established a parallel wonder, Operation Pluto, pipelines under the ocean, laying fuel lines across the English Channel. By September 1944, fuel flowed through undetected underwater pipes. Forward fuel depots were set up every 25 miles along the Red Ball route. Tanker trucks ran their own parallel convoy system, guaranteeing no vehicle waited more than 10 minutes for fuel. The Red Ball Express didn't just supply Patton's advance, it multiplied its speed exponentially. German military doctrine calculated that an armored division could sustain a 20 to 30-mile advance daily under optimal conditions. Patton's divisions, supplied by the Red Ball Express, averaged 40 to 60 miles daily for weeks. On September 1st, 1944, the 4th Armored Division advanced 35 miles in morning operations, stopped for resupply at noon. Red Ball trucks were waiting with fuel and ammunition, and then advanced another 32 miles in the afternoon. This 67-mile single-day advance devastated German defensive planning, which assumed a maximum 30-mile daily advance. Generaloberst Heinz Guderian, reviewing the reports in East Prussia, initially refused to accept them. No armored force can advance 60 miles daily for a week. Mechanical failures alone prevent it. This is propaganda or misidentification, but intercepted American radio communication validated the reports. More unsettling for German commanders, the Americans were openly broadcasting their locations without code, supremely confident in their capacity to move faster than the Germans could react. By September 5, 1944, German intelligence had compiled detailed reports on the Red Ball Express. The implications were devastating for Wehrmacht strategy. Every assumption about American military ability required immediate re-evaluation. The report noted observations that defied German military science. Americans wasted vehicles lavishly, abandoning damaged trucks rather than spending time repairing them. Drivers operated on stimulants for days, ignoring every rule of personnel management. Zero camouflage discipline, making the entire system vulnerable to air attack that never materialized. Mechanical failure rates of 30% daily, simply overwhelmed by redundancy. Fuel consumption that would bankrupt any European military. Field Marshal Walter Model's reaction revealed mounting despair. If these reports are accurate, we face not a superior army, but a superior civilization. They make no effort to hide because they do not fear us. They waste resources because they have infinite resources. We cannot defeat this with military tactics. The Red Ball Express drivers paid a physical cost German observers couldn't see. Drivers operated for 72 consecutive hours, suffering hallucinations from exhaustion and benzodrine. Accidents killed 300 drivers during the Red Ball's operational period, yet morale remained exceptionally high. These men, mostly African American, who were denied equal rights at home, understood they were making history. They were disproving Hitler's racial theories with every mile driven, every ton delivered. Captured German officers gave powerful evidence to the Red Ball Express's impact. Oberst Hans von Luck, taken prisoner in September 1944, told interrogators, "We knew we'd lost when we understood your supply system. You violate every rule, waste fuel, discard vehicles, exhaust drivers, yet succeed through sheer volume. You've industrialized warfare beyond our comprehension." The Red Ball Express ended on November 16, 1944, but its methodology had permanently revolutionized military logistics. The idea of continuous, high-volume, wasteful but effective supply became American military doctrine. When German generals surrendered in May 1945, many specifically referenced the Red Ball Express as proof of the futility of continued resistance. General der Panzertruppe Hasso von Manteuffel stated at his interrogation, "When we understood your logistics capacity, we knew the war was lost. You could supply armies faster than we could destroy them. The Red Ball Express was a weapon against which we had no defense." Field Marshal Albert Kesselring, among Germany's most capable commanders, was asked what astonished him most about American forces. His answer, "Not your tanks, not your planes, but your trucks." The Red Ball Express showed us that you had militarized your entire society's production capability. We were fighting your factories, not just your soldiers. The Red Ball Express was not a supply line, but a flowing river of material that drowned our forces. The German generals had scoffed at American logistics, labeling it undisciplined and unsustainable. 82 days later, those same generals surrendered to armies supplied by the Red Ball Express, finally comprehending that American trucks had defeated German tanks, that industrial excess had overwhelmed military expertise, and that logistics had become strategy.